Hello everyone, I'm Jacob Kaufman, I'm the nerd on the street, and today we're taking a look at Pop! OS 19.04. Okay guys, I'm gonna be honest, I don't really use Ubuntu, at least on my desktop. I've got it on some servers. I usually use Debian on my servers though, or CentOS sometimes, and I don't really use Ubuntu anywhere in my day-to-day life. That's why I didn't make a video when Ubuntu 19.04 came out earlier this month. Normally Ubuntu releases are pretty incremental anyway, so it might have gotten some views, but I really wouldn't have been covering any new information with an Ubuntu 19.04 installation video. I'm personally more excited about the KDE Applications 19.04 release, but those have not hit the Arch repositories yet, so while we're waiting for those, I thought I would take a look at another distribution, Pop! OS. Now, Pop! OS is made by a company called System76, and if you haven't seen my video on the Nerd on the Street Creative channel making fun of it, you should definitely go check that out. But while I did think it was strange when System76 announced that they were making their own distribution, since in the past they've just been a hardware vendor, Pop! OS has gotten very popular over the past year or two. The System76 folks have worked really closely with the Gnome project and with other distributions such as Elementary OS to work on things like their installer and their default desktop environment experience. Now, on one hand, System76 does make Pop! OS designed for day-to-day use, so maybe we won't see all of the advantages of using it just by installing it in a virtual machine like I'm about to do. But on the other hand, Pop! OS is supposed to be really polished, so maybe we will see some of those advantages just after looking at it for a couple of minutes. So that's what we're taking a look at today. Without further ado, I'll cut to the desktop. Okay guys, and here we are on the desktop. I do have VirtualBox open here. As I said, I'll be installing this in a virtual machine because I do use Arch Linux right now and I'm not planning to actually switch my main distro. But we are going to create a new virtual machine called Pop! OS. VirtualBox, of course, does not recognize that name, so we'll tell it that it is an Ubuntu-based distribution. We are going to use 4 gigs of RAM should be enough for this video. We'll create a new virtual hard disk. Just gonna give it about 20 gigs. We'll go 30 here. I will be deleting this probably later. So open up our settings and just tweak a couple things before we go in. Processor, we'll give it 2 cores. We'll enable our virtualization extensions there. We will turn up our video memory all the way and enable acceleration. 2D acceleration is only for Windows, so we'll just have 3D acceleration enabled. And we will add our ISO here so that we can boot into the live image. Everything else should be fine with the default settings. So we'll go ahead and click start and drag this into our screen recording. Here is what Pop! OS looks like. We are getting some text on the terminal. They've not managed to take that completely away. Looks like we did not get any sort of splash screen. I know Fedora has a very minimalistic splash screen. I kind of expected Pop! OS to have one as well, but looks like we just got into a desktop here, actually an installer. Alright, so before we do that installation, we will just increase our screen resolution here in our Gnome system settings. How do we do that again? Devices, displays, here we go. And we'll make this a little less than 1080p. Keep changes, and that way I can drag this into the frame. You guys can see the entire window. Excellent. And since this is Gnome 3, I am going to disable mouse pointer integration for this virtual machine so that I can use the corner navigation. Alright, so we will select our language as English, locale USA, select, keyboard layout, also English, default. Alright, so we are going to perform a clean install since this is a virtual machine. We will install to our only hard drive in the system. So this installer is fairly nice, pretty simple. It's got System76's branding, which, I'm not a huge fan of the whole robot cartoony thing they have going on, but looks like they are asking if you want to encrypt your drive. I have never seen this so prominent in the installer, actually. The green, you should probably click this button, is to choose a password for encryption, and the don't encrypt is like if you're clicking cancel. So it's almost like they're trying to push drive encryption as the default. I'll go ahead and enter a drive encryption password. Of course, it's going to be very weak since this is just a test machine, but we'll see how that works. So compared to something like Ubuntu's installer, so far this installer, it had less options per page. Like I said before, pretty simplistic. One thing to note, obviously it did not ask me for a username or a root password or any of that information, because Pop! OS is meant to be installed on System76's own computers before they ship them out, and those are all user-specific settings that you're going to want to set up when you start your computer up for the first time. So Pop! OS's installer does the same thing that System76 does in their Office, where when you install it, it just asks you for basic things like the disk layout. The actual user account information and all of that is not set until the first boot. If we click down here, there is a terminal button. Looks like we can get some more information about what's going on. This does look nicer than the Ubuntu installer's drop-down for terminal info. The terminal viewer in the Ubuntu installer is pretty buggy with regards to how wide it is and how far it drops down based on what's scrolling through. This one just takes up the pane here of our installer window, so that's pretty nice. Compared to the Fedora, Red Hat, Anaconda installer, this is certainly more simple. The Fedora installer doesn't really make you go through the options in any specific order. It gives you a bunch of buttons you can click in any order you want, which can be a little overwhelming and confusing whether or not you need to fill out certain options. Honestly, this installer is pretty similar to the Chinchi installer, which is used in Antergos. After restarting, you can set a new user, or you can shut down now and set up a new user later. So here's where you can either shut down the machine and hand it off to whoever you're setting this up for, or you can restart it and set it up yourself. So we'll do the latter option, and we'll see how this disk encryption works if it prompts us for a password. Yep, please unlock disk crypt data, and I'll be honest, I was actually expecting this to look uglier than it does, so that's pretty nice. We'll type in our password here. They did manage to make a disk encryption unlocking screen that looks semi-decent. Last time I used disk encryption, it was on like Ubuntu or something, so it didn't look great. Okay, looks like our video settings did get reset, so I just locked the screen. Okay. Guess we can't set up our... Yeah, we can't get into the settings to set our screen resolution before we finish the wizard here, which I don't get. We could access the Gnome settings from the live installer, but not being able to set your screen resolution, I mean, I don't know. They're really relying on it auto-detecting correctly, which in this case, in VirtualBox, it obviously didn't. Typing. So we want English US, that is the default down here. We'll click Next. Privacy, location services, we'll leave it on since this is a test machine. Time zone. Connect your accounts online. Like, I'm going to want to link a Google account on my desktop computer. We'll click Skip. Full name, Jacob Kaufman, username Jacob. Interesting that by default it was trying to make me use Jacob Kaufman as a username. That's like Mac OS trying to use the full name. Password. Next. Okay, and we will start using Pop! OS. So once again, very simple installer. There were no checkboxes on whether or not we wanted to install proprietary media. There were no checkboxes on whether or not we wanted to grab updates while we were installing. It just installed, and I don't know whether or not any of those things are present. Once again, we will switch our screen resolution to just under 1080p. Okay, and this is Pop! OS. So as you can see, we are in GNOME 3, which is not my desktop environment of choice, like I mentioned earlier, but it can be pretty decent. Like I said, I'm not a fan particularly of this art style here that we're using for our default desktop background. So let's see if we can't change that right off the bat. So background. Looks like, are these... Okay, so we do have some other Pop! OS specific desktop backgrounds. Let's try this one. Okay, so this is a bit darker. It's a bit more abstract. That's a little bit more my speed. Just gonna scroll through the rest of these. Yeah, I'm not too much a fan of these cartoony ones, but I do like these patterns that they have. Not sure where they got all these images from, but... Oh, here we go. No, I really like this one. I think this is the one that my server workstation laptop that I got from System76 shipped with, although that came with Ubuntu because it was before Pop! OS existed. So I'm going to leave my background on this one. I will set the lock screen to something else as well, though. This will do right here. Okay, and we did just get a notification. An update is available for our system. Let's click on that and see what happens. It looks like we opened up Gnome software. I think this is Gnome software. Nope, this is the Popshop. Okay, which is actually based on the Elementary OS App Center. As you can see, if we click on our drop down here, it says io.elementary.appcenter. So that's interesting. We will update all here. What are we updating though? Operating system updates. 2 components. So we've got quote-unquote operating system updates that includes couple of different packages. We'll go ahead and, yeah, we'll just update all. And looks like it's only going to install the available updates, won't necessarily install any drivers. We do have some drivers available though. We can have VirtualBox Guest DKMS, so it knows that we are in VirtualBox. And you know, I would like to have the best experience possible here. I'm just going to try installing all of the drivers available, and we'll see what happens. I don't think it liked that I just tried to click install on all three of those at the same time. So we'll leave that running. As you can see, Pop! OS uses sort of this brown and orange theme. It's a little bit flatter than Ubuntu's ambience theme, although I think Ubuntu might have a new theme with 19.04, but I haven't seen it yet. You can see in the Popshop we do have some recommended applications here that are proprietary, such as Steam or Slack. While those are very popular, they are proprietary, so I think it's interesting that they're in here. Telegram Desktop is a nice one that I do use personally, and I believe it's open source, but it is not in the standard Ubuntu repositories as far as I know. Let's try installing this and see what happens there. I'm wondering if this is a snap package or if it's an actual just apt repository that's pulling from. Let's see if we can get to our progress overall for all the package things that we're doing anywhere. This appears to be just our repository settings. So there is a Pop! OS apt repository as well as, well, actually, there are several Pop! OS repositories, some of them on Launchpad and one just hosted by System76. Telegram Desktop has been successfully installed, so that's cool. Don't want to go there again. Where do we get back to updates? Installed. Okay, let's install the third possible driver here. And if we go and look at, oh, looks like the driver installation is messing with our screen, so that's nice. Not like it wasn't to be expected. Let's go and set our desktop resolution one more time. And now we're running into that bug with Gnome's Software Center where I can't maximize because they've, gotten rid of the maximize button. And maximize is grayed out as an option here, but I can't scroll down to get to the desktop or the device settings where I can change my screen resolution. I just hit right control to get my cursor out of the virtual machine, but making our window bigger here, not doing us any good. I'm going to try rebooting the system just to see if we can get it to let me make the screen resolution bigger again. And like I said earlier, I am completely aware that I'm trying this out in a VM, not on hardware, and of course that is a disadvantage to Pop! OS. So far it looks just like a plain old GNOME distribution though, which is not necessarily a bad thing. This disk decryption is very slow. I'm wondering if that would be faster on a desktop, because it is really just sitting here. And I know I put the password in right because it says set up successfully, and it would say something else if I put in an incorrect password. But we are frozen, so that's great. All right, I'm going to reset our machine here. Reset. Ubuntu in the Grub bootloader there. Interesting, they didn't register themselves in Grub as Pop! OS. They just left it at Ubuntu for the label. Okay, please unlock crypt data. Set up successfully. Okay, it worked that time. Beautiful distribution. So here is our user account we'll sign into. Looks like they had a slightly modified GNOME theme for the login screen as well, the GNOME Display Manager. And okay, so we are logged in. It remembered our larger screen resolution this time. It looks like the corner, I can't tell if this hot corner is deactivated. That might just be a virtual machine thing. Let me try adjusting one setting here and starting this up again. Looks like crypt data is going all right that time. All right, yeah, really not sure what's going on with the hot corner because I use that thing all the time when I have this installed on hardware. But we'll move on from that for now. As you can see, Pop! OS does come with its own icon theme, which it's a little interesting. It's the same apps that you get with GNOME. I like kind of the blue icons here. I do understand that in this latest version of Pop! OS, you won't see custom icons on any application that is not part of, I guess, GNOME, because there were some complaints from developers in one of the previous versions of Pop! OS that their application's brand was being diluted by Pop! OS applying a different icon theme, which personally I will not be using those developers' applications because I think they're kind of just whiny based on the fact that they're complaining about that. But it looks like most of these applications that are installed by default do have custom icons. Telegram Desktop here we're going to launch. I'm not actually going to log into it because I don't want to have all my messages in here and on the video, but I am interested to see. Okay, it doesn't even look like Snapd is installed by default, which I am completely okay with, but that is very interesting. We don't have a snap folder in our home folder, so yeah, I guess Pop! OS is not using snap packages right now, and to be clear, once again, I do think that is a good thing. Aside from that, trying to figure out what else I can look at here, because this is just a lot of GNOME apps, like I said. We have the GNOME Terminal here, customized default font. Oh, I like that light blue highlight, that's nice. Let's see how LibreOffice looks, because LibreOffice is an application that it's actually pretty difficult to make it look good. It works really well, but with the wrong theme, it just looks pretty clunky. This looks all right. Yeah, this is pretty good. The icon theme here, I can see all of the icons that aren't grayed out very clearly. The ones that are grayed out, I can very clearly tell that they're grayed out. And the colors here, the accents, we're sticking with that orange accent theme in our drop-down buttons here, and this is using the GTK theme. So yeah, that's pretty nice. Gnome Files in particular is an application that is not quite as robust for me as I like my file manager to be. That's why I use Dolphin. When I'm not using Dolphin, I'm using Thunar, or the file manager that ships with the Cinnamon desktop environment. Those are both a bit more feature-rich than Gnome Files. I really hate that there's no type ahead in Gnome Files. You know, if I just want to move my selection to music right now and I hit M to do that, it changes the entire view of the whole window into a list search. Very disruptive to the user experience, but the Gnome developers don't seem to care much. If we go into our applications again, let's see what else we have here. So Popshop is what they call their fork or their installation of the Elementary OS App Center, like I said earlier. And the Elementary OS App Center, I know it's got a lot of paid apps in it. What was that presentation app that I liked from Elementary OS? I think it was called Spice Up. So if I type in Spice Up, that does not appear to be in here. Okay, so it looks like they are using the Elementary OS App Center, but you can't actually download Elementary OS apps on Pop! OS. So that's some fragmentation. And you cannot contribute financially to developers in Pop! OS like you can in Elementary OS. Just wanted to check. Yeah, we've got, let's see what other GNOME settings we have available. See what they haven't taken out yet. Looks like just all the standard stuff. We do have our calendar at the top of the screen. We have a do not disturb mode for notifications. I think maybe the first time I've seen that. Let's see what happens when we add a location for weather here. Cahokia. Is that supposed to be my location, or is that the name of this app? Let's turn off automatic location. And let's add St. Louis, Missouri. There we go. Okay, so this is not the name of the app, this is the location up here. This is a nice, very unrealistic picture of a sky there. And 46 degrees. Is it really that cold here? I don't know. But now that shows up when we drop down our calendar. I do like that they've got 12-hour time enabled by default. I think a lot of distros, or at least some of them, do ship with 24-hour time by default, and you have to go and change it. We've got Geary, is a very nice email app. Once again, not actually going to sign into it here, but that is one of my preferred email apps on Linux. That's also what ships with Elementary OS, I believe. What calendar application are we using? This looks like the Elementary OS calendar application, or is this just GNOME Calendar? About calendar. Okay, this is just the calendar authors. I think this is GNOME Calendar. Anything else we can take a look at? Obviously, we are running GNOME, so we've got our activities overview that we can use to drag windows into different virtual desktops. I do love the way that GNOME handles virtual desktops, and I am a fan of the activities screen in general when I am using this on physical hardware. GNOME applications bug the heck out of me, but the GNOME shell, for the most part, I do like. But this is a very minimalistic default installation. We've got LibreOffice, we do have Firefox, but aside from those, we really don't have a lot of extra applications. They just leave it nice and fresh for you to install whatever other programs you want. We do get some things like Simple Scan and GNOME Videos here that I wouldn't normally use. We do have a USB flashing tool by default installed, which is interesting. And we can use that to flash ISOs or IMG files onto USB flash drives. If you want to try out a different distribution, or if you want to, I think they include it so that you can give Pop! OS to other people because it's called Popsicle. But since you can select an ISO, I assume that would work with any distribution's installation file. So that is interesting. It's actually super useful they include that for people buying System76 computers in case you buy it and you don't want to use Pop! OS. That way you can just download whatever ISO you want flash it to a flash drive and install it. Eddie is a deb installer. I think I've run into that before. That's about it. That's really all that there is to Pop! OS. It's really just GNOME, the theme. It's their App Center, which is the Elementary OS App Center. And yeah, the installer is a big part of what they put work into for this, from what blog posts I've read. So yeah, I wanted to try out Pop! OS since it is all the rage nowadays. I've seen posts on Reddit about Linus Tech Tips making videos about using Steam on Pop! OS. I use Steam on Arch Linux and it works perfectly well. But we can install Steam here. It's not going to work great in a virtual machine. But yeah, Steam is a pretty well-written application that works consistently across different distributions, as is Telegram. That's something both of those apps have in common, is they work very well and very consistently across different distributions. We do, of course, have the one-click install in Pop! OS, just like there's a one-line install for Arch Linux, because Steam is just in the standard repositories for Arch. We can launch Steam here, and the icon in the activities overview is very blurry. I don't know if you guys can tell. That is, I mean, the Firefox icon here is sharp. Telegram icon is sharp. That Steam icon, very blurry. I know the GNOME applications menu does have larger icons than other desktop environments, but I think there are higher resolution versions of the Steam icon available to use, so not sure what's going on there. We still do have the same weird font by default in Steam, so yeah, not seeing anything that I don't have on Arch so far as Steam goes. But maybe the minimalism is why it's so popular. I mean, that's kind of why I like Arch, is because you install it and you pick out your own desktop environment and then pick out what apps you want to install. There's no base installation. I mean, there is a base installation, but it's got very few things in it. System 76 has done sort of the same thing with Pop! OS. The base installation includes a desktop environment, so you don't get to make that choice there, but you do get to choose what applications you're installing from their Popshop, which is right here. I keep not being able to find that since, I don't know, a rocket ship for an application store just doesn't connect in my brain. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below about Pop! OS. Like I said, I will be making some videos about some KDE applications as soon as 19.04 gets into the Arch repos here. Here's Steam finally starting up. I'm not going to launch that because I know what Steam looks like and works like on Linux. Like I said, I use it on Arch all the time. But for now, that's Pop! OS 19.04. Let me know your guys' wow, this font is messed up here. Let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments below. I'm Jacob Kaufman, I'm the Nerd on the Street, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.